What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 11 of the American Pageant, Triumphs and Travails of the Jeffersonian Republic. So first of all, Federalists and Republicans. In the election of 1800, the Federalists had a lot of enemies coming from those Alien and Sedition Acts from earlier, and they had taken some damage from John Adams not declaring war on France. A lot of Federalists were launching attacks on Jefferson, saying that he had robbed a widow and her children of a trust fund, fathered numerous children with his slaves, called him an atheist, other remarks like that. Most importantly, in this election, though, is the Revolution of 1800, which essentially is just the peaceful transition of power, because in the past, it's usually not like that. Until this time, until the United States had formed democracy, a lot of power transitions were not peaceful in any sense. This one, however, was. Federalists stepped down from office after Jefferson won. They did it peacefully, not necessarily happily, and the Republicans were more of the People's Party coming in, so all good there. So thirdly, responsibility breeds moderation. On March 4th, in 1801, Thomas Jefferson was inaugurated president. In his address, he said, "All Americans are Federalists, all are Republicans." Basically, he was implying that we were a mixture. We're all one people, pretty much. So you can see he's a simple, frugal guy. He liked neutrality, didn't like conflict, pretty good. Now, there were two Thomas Jeffersons. A scholarly private citizen who philosophized in his study, and the harassed public official who discovered the bookish theories did not work in practical politics. So he dismissed a few Federalist officials, and those who wanted the seats complained, but he had to rely on his casual charm because his party was pretty disunited. So let's talk about the judiciary. The Judiciary Act, passed by the Federalists in their last days of congressional domination before Jefferson came in, packed newly created judgeships with Federalist backing men. These guys are known as midnight judges. They pretty much stuck them in to prolong Federalist legacy. Alright, all these judges are going to rule in cases in favor of Federalist point of view. It's pretty much prolonging Federalist ideals. So, in 1804, Jefferson tried to impeach the Supreme Court justice. He wasn't too happy about this. When the vote got to the Senate, not enough votes were mustered, and to this day, no attempt to alter the Supreme Court has ever been tried through impeachment. It's just Thomas Jefferson right there. So another thing about T. Jeff, he had a natural fear of large, strong, standing militaries. Since such a military could be turned on the people, cause a dictatorship, that's not good. So he reduced the United States militia to 2,500 men, and navies were reduced a bit to a peacetime footing. So, other navies out there, like the pirates of North Africa, they're not going to reduce their military, so they're still looting our ships, and in 1801, the Pasha of Tripoli indirectly declared war when he cut down the flagstaff of the American consulate. So, our peaceful Jefferson had a problem with whether to fight, and he reluctantly sent our navy to the shores of Tripoli over there, and as I just told you, our navy's pretty small, so you can guess how that went. Alright, maybe the most important thing of Thomas Jefferson's presidency, the Louisiana Purchase. So in 1800, Napoleon, leader of France at the time, secretly induced the King of Spain to cede the Louisiana territory to France. Then in 1802, the Spaniards withdrew the right of deposit guaranteed by the Pinckney Treaty, and in 1803, Jefferson sent James Monroe to join regular minister Robert R. Livingston to buy New Orleans and as much land to the east of the river for a total of $10 million. That was all he was going to go. So instead, Napoleon offered to sell New Orleans and the land west of it, Louisiana, for $15 million. Sounds like a lot, but that's actually dirt cheap. Now, here's where the interesting part comes in. Jefferson is a Republican. We know Republicans are strict constructionists, meaning they have a strict interpretation of the Constitution. The Constitution does not state anywhere about buying or purchasing land, so to Jefferson, he can't do it. However, he does it. He causes Federalists and Republicans to make a full 180-degree turnaround from their philosophical beliefs simply because of these matters at hand. So now Jefferson is a loose constructionist, and Federalists become strict constructionists. So long-term view of the Louisiana Purchase created a precedent of acquisition of foreign territory through purchase, and we all know about Lewis and Clark. In the spring of 1804, Jefferson sent them to explore. They met up with Sacagawea. They spent 2.5 years exploring. They came back with maps and new animals, all that good stuff. Alright, so let's talk about neutrality. So in 1804, Jefferson won his second term pretty handily, but Napoleon over there in Europe had deliberately provoked Britain into renewing its war with France. As a result, American trade sank as England and France, they couldn't hurt each other, resorted to indirect blows. In 1806, London issued the Orders of Council, and Napoleon ordered the seizure of all ships, including American, which entered British ports. So that brings us to impressment, which essentially is the illegal seizure of men and forcing them to serve on your ships, and this happened a lot to American seamen. This infuriated the United States. From 1808 to 1811, some 6,000 Americans were impressed. So, in 1807, a Royal frigate, the Leopard, confronted the U.S. frigate, the Chesapeake, about 10 miles off the coast of Virginia. The British captain ordered the seizure of 4 alleged deserters. When the American commander refused, the U.S. ship received 3 devastating blows that killed 3 Americans and wounded 18. This was pretty much the last straw, impressment-wise. However, our guy Jefferson still wanted to be peaceful. So, no war. Alright, moving on to the Embargo Act. The Embargo Act of late 1807 forbid the export of all goods from the United States. Jefferson just wanted to be neutral, just only U.S. However, this was a huge failure. The economy in the United States relied heavily on exports and trade, no matter how much Thomas Jefferson disliked that, and we could not survive only on our own goods. This embargo hurt the same merchants that it was trying to protect. So, eventually Congress repealed this. 1809, they replaced it with the Non-Intercourse Act, which reopened trade with all the nations of the world except France and England. Sounds great, except France and England happen to be our number 1 and number 2 trade partners, so we've got our same problem. So, after another failure, the only thing that could save us was Macon's Bill number 2. Macon's Bill number 2 permitted American trade with all the world, and it promised American restoration of trade to France and or England if either one of them dropped their commercial restrictions. This was much better than the Embargo and Non-Intercourse Act. So Napoleon had his opportunity to do this, and in August of 1810 he announced that the commercial restrictions had been lifted, and the new president, James Madison, desperate for recognition of the law, declared France available for American trade. Unfortunately, Napoleon lied, and never really lifted restrictions, but America had been duped into entering European affairs against England. Turns out this was not so good. So, sidetracking a little bit away from Europe, we have our own problems on the frontier. Indians have been watching us take away their land for a while, and as white people settled in Kentucky, which is a traditional sacred area, they were kind of fed up. So, the congressmen were kind of worried about this, and young, aggressive congressmen that were worried about these Indian threats were known as war hawks. So we've got a showdown coming up between the war hawks and the Indians, namely William Henry Harrison against Tecumseh. At the Battle of Tippecanoe, William Henry Harrison killed the prophet, burned the camp to the ground, and at the Battle of the Thames, Harrison kills Tecumseh. Indian dream pretty much is gone after that. In the South, Andrew Jackson crushes the Creek Indians at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. Indian rebellion is pretty much diminished. So the entire area of the east of the Mississippi is back open for safe settlement. Good for us, bad for the Indians. So Warhawks take the win on that one. Lastly, we're in the James Madison now, and Mr. Madison decides to take us to war in the War of 1812. You may ask, why did he declare war? And I'll tell you, because England's impressments of American sailors was just too much for us. France was allied more with the Republicans, who was currently in charge, and Canada has come into play. They seemed like a very tempting prize, seemed easy to get, good land, all that. So New England, which was still making a lot of money, did not want the war. Neither did Federalists. They were more inclined toward Britain. They also realized that if Canada was conquered, it would add more farmland, and that increases Republicans. So kind of divided, but we're going to war anyway, for three main reasons. Freedom of the seas. The United States wanted the right to sail and trade without fear. The possibility of land. They could gain Canada or Florida. And issues with the Indians. Mainly resolved, but they were still upset about the British giving guns to the Indians in that Warhawk War we just talked about. So, like I said a minute ago, the nation is pretty divided on this war. Generally, North was against it, West and South were for it. So, Great Britain came in and they were fighting a disunited America. Not a great team to put up against traditionally the most powerful country in the world. Since Britain was the enemy, while New England tried everything that they could to do, Americans ended up being pretty frustrated with their ambitions. Pretty messy war. That ends Chapter 11. Study hard, get a good grade on this test. See you back here for Chapter 12.